You want your 11-year-old to be responsible. You want to give them freedom, but you want to be able to trust them. And sometimes they don't do the things that you expect them to do so that you can feel like they can be responsible and trustworthy. And all of a sudden, things get tricky. Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast. Today on the pod, one of your tricky questions, a listener question sent through from a mum of an 11-year-old who really, really wants her son to be independent, but he's just not doing the right thing. How do you confront him? How do you have a meaningful conversation? How do you get buy-in and endorsement of rules that are designed just to keep him safe? That's what we answer today with your tricky questions on the Happy Families podcast. Stay with us. Hello, welcome to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every single day. This is Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We're Justin and Kylie Coulson. We're the parents of 6 kids, and we've got a tricky question to answer today. If you have tricky questions, we love hearing from you. You can contact us via podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Just send us your voice note with your tricky question, or alternatively, jump online to happyfamilies.com.au and scroll down till you see the button that says record. Start talking and tell us what's on your mind, just like Justine.
Hi, I've got an 11-year-old boy and I'm trying to give him more opportunities to be independent. Part of that is allowing him to go up to our local park to kick a ball around with a mate. And we have agreed boundaries about that he has to be back at a certain time and he needs to let me know if he's going to be somewhere different that's not the park. I've found recently that he hasn't been telling me the truth about where he's been going. He's been venturing up to the shops and hasn't told me about it. And he's also started breaking the curfew and coming home later. I'm not sure how to talk to him about this. I want to keep up a positive connection. I want to talk to him about his reasons for not telling me the whole truth. But I also want to make sure that he's learning from his decisions, his bad choices, and that he can learn from the mistake.
So, Kylie, we've dealt with this so many times, trying to give the kids responsibility. You give them an inch, and what did Grandma always say?
They'll take a mile.
Which never made sense to me because I grew up after 1966 and I only know centimetres and kilometres. But 3 things that jump out at me straight away before we get into the nitty-gritty of this tricky question. Number 1, this is a joint goal. He wants independence and you want independence. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. You're both working towards the same thing. It's just that it's got to be in a way that helps you as a parent to feel safe and secure. We do need to rethink our assumptions. Sometimes the kids are probably going to be okay. They're probably going to be okay, but you just don't know. So I get it. I've got a lot of empathy for a mum of a teenage, not even a teenage boy, an 11-year-old boy who wants to hang out at the shops because all sorts of stuff happens there. Secondly, if you want your kids to be responsible, you need to give them responsibility. You can't take responsibility away and expect them to be responsible. They've got to have responsibility. I think you can see where I'm going to go with this response to this tricky question. And third, just to complicate matters, rules matter. But without a relationship, rules lead to rebellion. So Justine's hit everything that matters. We want him to be responsible and therefore have the opportunity to enjoy responsibility. We want him to have respect for the rules, but we've also got to have a relationship. The connection matters. And we've got this same goal here, but how do we build trust? All right, Kylie, I know that technically I'm the one that's quote unquote the expert, but as we had a quick chat about this conversation, you had some big and important ideas.
Justine suggested that the most important thing to her out of all of this is that she maintains a positive relationship with her son. That's really important to the ongoing relationship that they share. And I think there's a misconception that if we have to sit down with our children and have tricky conversations, that we're going to sever or damage the positive connections that we have.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to our ability as adults to be emotionally regulated in that moment as we sit with our children and have these tricky conversations.
Okay, legitimate question. How many tricky conversations do you think we have with our children on a weekly basis? Like almost every day, at least a couple, yeah?
Yes.
With 6 kids, there's just always friction. There's always something going on. There's stuff that needs, 6 daughters especially. So how do we have the tricky questions? We follow the same structure every time. We literally don't change the structure when we're doing it right. The 3 E's of effective discipline: explore, explain, empower. But that doesn't just mean that you say the same thing every time like a robot. An exploration conversation by its very nature is going to be different every single time you have the chat because people's motivations, people's reasons start to shift. But really, at the core of it, this is a conversation about building trust, and you build trust best by listening, by understanding one another. And I think that this is an opportunity for Justine to get to know her 11-year-old son a little bit more.
So in Justine's case, we want to try and understand why it is that her son has decided that in spite of the fact that mum is doing everything she can to show him that she wants to give him some independence.
Yeah, go outside, have fun, kick a ball at the park.
And she's given him the leeway in the acknowledgement, you may not stay at the park, but if you are going to go somewhere else, just let me know. So the exploration here is trying to understand why he felt that he couldn't ask her, knowing that permission was already granted under those circumstances.
Yep. So is it that he elected not to, or is it just that in the moment with the boys all having fun and we've jumped on the bikes or the skateboards or the scooters and whizzed down to the shops because that's what we did? It's also the coming home on time thing. But again, like when you're 11 years old, are you really that bothered about the time? So I think there's a developmental element here. But those questions, those conversations, it's so easy to jump to a conclusion, isn't it? And say they're doing this because they're disregarding the rules, they're abrogating their responsibility. There's something insidious going on. Like, it's really easy to look at the kids and say, I think you're being rebellious. I think that you're being intentionally, you're intentionally disregarding the things that we've asked. And sometimes, I think more often than not, there's no malice. It's just mindlessness.
Yeah, and you kind of have a track record, right? Regardless of whether or not your child has left the home before, are they a child who responds instantly to to requests, or are they a child that just kind of does things in their own time? Do they get caught up in things and don't recognize that they've been there for an extra 15 minutes before you've had to remind them for the third time? Those conversations are really important because they allow your child to recognize that you are giving them the benefit of the doubt. You're not jumping to the conclusion, like you suggested, that they're doing something wrong.
Okay, so exploring where he's coming from, what's going on for you, what's important to you, what are you working towards, what is it that you really want to have here? Understanding those things are going to be your first step. After the break, we're going to talk about the explain and empower elements of those 3 E's, but especially how we can get to a point where your son is going to willingly choose to step into, comply with, and feel committed to the rules that you develop together. That's the whole box and dice, and it's coming up after the break. We're back. It's another tricky question on the Happy Families podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast and it's making a difference in your family, please share the pod. Tell others about it, whether you click the links or just open your mouth and let people know. It helps other people find out about the podcast to make their families happier. Okay, Kylie, let's talk about explaining for a sec. Normally when we start to explain things to our kids, they fall asleep. They roll their eyes.
I think that's why it's really important that you actually take a different tact when it comes to explaining, because it's actually not about you explaining. As soon as you start talking, like you said, they shut down. So for me, it would be asking them, could they take your perspective for a moment?
Yeah.
And how do you think I'm feeling as your mum when I've just suggested to you that if you want to go somewhere else, just let me know. And then you not only don't tell me, I find out later after the fact, and you're home late.
Right.
How am I feeling?
So research shows that tween and teen boys have a drop in empathy. Like, it's really hard for them, but that doesn't mean that it's eliminated from their lives. It just means that biologically there's this pull away from empathy and a pull towards egocentrism, and it's all about my perspective and that's all that matters. These kinds of conversations are really good developmentally for your son because they're dragging him, sometimes kicking and screaming, back towards an empathy approach to the world. If we believe that healthy males help the people around them to feel safer and stronger, one thing that your son can do is recognize that when he is not communicating with you about his plans, when he's going behind your back or doing things that aren't consistent with the things that you've agreed to, that you don't feel safe because you're worried about his safety. You actually feel disempowered and weakened, and that's not a nice place to be. And Kylie, the question that you're asking it really cuts to the very core of what this is about. Hey, what does it do to me? What does it do to your dad? What does it do to us as a family when we can't find you at the park or when you don't come home on time? Just imagine what it's like for us for a sec. That's perspective taking. That's empathy. There's another question to ask as well. And bear in mind, this is the explain phase, right? So explain is very much about saying, here's what you need to know. But Kylie, as you've rightly said, the kids get bored, and so it's much better to get them to explain to you what your rules are. If you want to build trust and have this two-way relationship, I think there's value in saying, why do you think we've asked you to do X or Y? Why do you think that we only want you to be at the park? Why do you think we want you to communicate with us? What makes us say you've got to be home by such and such a time? As he is able to explain to you why you have set those boundaries, ideally together, then he's much more likely to step in to endorse them, right? If I can explain why the boundaries exist, then I can understand them and I can probably go ahead with them and be committed to them. So exploring is getting his perspective. Explaining is ideally getting him to explain your perspective.
And sometimes he might not be able to do that because he's in that phase where he doesn't really care what you think.
Yeah, you ask him a question, he goes, I don't know.
So you might need to tap into somebody that he does care about. Your best mate. You said you were going to meet him at such and such a time and he doesn't show up and he's been gone for half an hour. How do you feel? How does that make you feel? I think just finding a relationship that they really can tap into and find that level of empathy that's needed to understand the dynamics of the relationship that you share together is really important, because that's where you get the buy-in.
Yeah, what we're going for is a level of identification with the value. The value is honesty, or the value is punctuality, or the value is integrity. So can we get him away from this externalized, I'm only doing what I said because otherwise I'll get in trouble, to...
Or I don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah, I don't know what the big deal is. So we're getting him to the point where he goes, yeah, okay, I get it. It matters because of these reasons. He doesn't necessarily love it. It's not lighting him up. He's not saying, oh my goodness, I'm a man of integrity, so I've got to be home at 5 p.m. That's not what this is about. This is about him going, I value my relationship with my parents. I respect myself more when I do what I say I was going to do, and people respect me for that as well. So therefore, I'm going to do that. That's what we're going for. And then we'll get to empower. So this is the third E.
This is the really fun part of the conversation, especially if your kids have got buy-in.
Right.
Because you actually
this creates the buy-in.
You get to collaborate with them. One of the questions you might ask is, I know that we say that we want you home at 5 o'clock. Does 5 o'clock feel like a fair time for you?
Yeah.
Based on what his other friends are doing, they might not have to be home till 6.
Make the case for 6 p.m.
So let's talk about that. How can I feel good about a 6 o'clock return, and how can you honour that?
Worth saying, if you're not going to feel good about the 6 o'clock return, your job is to work with your son so that the ultimate goal of empowering your child is not to say you can do whatever you want. It's not carte blanche. It's not total freedom and independence. The need that we're trying to support here is the autonomy need. And a lot of people think that autonomy means I get to do whatever I choose. That's not it. Autonomy is about endorsing. So we're trying to get to a point where we can come up with a rule that he can get behind, that he can endorse, in the same way that we don't actually have choice in terms of what side of the road we drive on. The government has mandated that we drive on a particular side of the road. But because we get it, it makes sense, we buy the rationale, we endorse that, and therefore, even though we're being completely controlled, we still drive on the correct side of the road. We know that it's safe. We know that we won't be fined. It just makes sense. So that's what we're going for here. You're going to stay in touch. Do you endorse the idea of that? Why? Okay, good. Builds trust. We can rely on each other here. We're going to have you home at a certain time. Why? Yeah, cool. Okay, does that make sense? Can you endorse that as a behaviour, as a way of moving forward? Yep. Okay, cool. We can go ahead there.
So I've been working a lot at the gym since the beginning of the year.
We're going to have a long conversation about this on Thursday. I can't wait.
And as we're talking, the analogy is coming to me. When I started at the gym, I was lifting a 5 kilo weight. And I don't just go from 5 kilos to 20 kilos overnight, right? It doesn't work like that. I have to slowly, incrementally add weight to my 5 kilos till I can get to the 20 kilos. And so with our kids, just using the example we've got from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, to me, that's a huge jump. I'm not ready to make that jump. But I can talk to them about whether or not we go to 5:30.
And if you can demonstrate that you can be responsible,
that's right,
then we can talk about extending.
And we're going to add more weight. We're going to add more trust to the relationship. The other part of this conversation is he wants to go to the shops, which seems like a logical place that he and his friends might end up at the end of having a play at the park. They might want to go get a drink or an ice cream or something like that. So Is it fair that he has to tell you every time he leaves the park that he's going to go down to the shops to get a treat?
Or could you have an agreed upon 2 or 3 or 4 different places where he could be at A, B, C or D, and so long as he's at those 4 places, that's all that matters. How much do you really have to monitor your 11, soon to be 12-year-old son?
Yeah, because independence is about being able to do things on your own.
Okay, so that's our answer for you, Justine. We really hope that it's helpful. The 3 E's of effective discipline. I've written blogs about them. We'll link to them in the show notes. I've also written about them in my book. And there's a whole lot of content out there to help you to find ways to navigate this with your son. But we're pretty confident this will be magic for you.
Don't shy away from having a hard conversation. That's actually how good communication happens.
Another tricky question, hopefully answered well and helpfully. Thanks for the voice note, Justine. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au if you would like to hit us with a tricky question, or go to happyfamilies.com.au, scroll down to where the record button is and start talking. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Mim Hammonds provides additional support. And for more info to make your family happier, visit happyfamilies.com.au.